Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charmley. This is another church in Cumbria. This is a late Victorian building, St Cuthbert's Seascale. It's built to replace a temporary church, what they call an iron church, a tin tabernacle, basically a timber frame building covered in corrugated metal that was destroyed quite spectacularly in a storm, and hopefully we'll be able to have a look at the photograph of the aftermath, which is quite amazing, really. So this is a late Victorian building. Seascale is one of a number of these seaside resorts that grow up in the Victorian era along the English coast. That previously there have been fishing villages here, but it's something of a storm-lashed coast at times. But the great summer holiday and going to the beach all become very important to people living in the industrial towns, and places like this then cater to these summer visitors, but also there's a local economy grows up around them, so you've got people in the winter as well worshipping in this church. So this is a very good example, and it has a little bit of the history of Seascale and of English seaside towns in general. So we'll have a look around and see what we can see. As usual, then we start at the west end, and you can see the church here has been reordered. Some of the pews have been retained, but most seating is in the form of this temporary, of these movable chairs. And it's been set up for an event and this sort of thing. So it's dedicated to St Cuthbert, and so we have here St Cuthbert and St Hilda, reference, of course, to the ancient history of Christianity here. And here we've got Queen Ethelberga and the Venerable Bede. The style is a sort of 14th century Gothic, fairly simple, very much of its day. We have here memorial to Winifred Gardner, Kathleen Bellamy, principals of Calder Girls' School, 1946 to 67. Because one of the things that happens in these towns, in these seaside villages, seaside resort places, is you have these schools are established. The sea air is supposed to be good, and it's a good location then for the work. We have here memorial to Sergeant Matthew Hudson, Mossop MM, a military medal, that is, 15th West Yorkshire Regiment, Leeds Pals. The Pals battalions, when the war breaks out, it's this great idea. We'll have these people together with their friends. Well, what actually happens, of course, is that you get a whole community wiped out pretty much in one day. All the young men are killed, and entire streets, and they decide that actually might be a bad idea. So they change that, and here we have memorial. This is, of course, the Transfiguration and the Triumphal Entry in Jerusalem. And here we have the first memorial here. This is Elizabeth Wilson, Anne Hilton Wilson, Mary Wilson, and Florence Wilson, who were principals of Calder Girls' School, Seascale, which they founded in 1882. We have here the pulpit. There's interesting, got these what they call twin ambones, sort of reading desks either side. At the moment, for reasons, the chancellor's closed up, so you can't get in there. And that is the font there. So while we can't get into the chancellor, we can have a little look in the aisle. And the thing about this aisle, you see, it's one of the problems with these seaside resort towns is, or seaside resort villages as this is that you've got more people here in the summer than in the winter. So what do you do? Well, one of the things you can do is you have an aisle, and that means you've got seating there that can be closed off in the winter when you don't need it. So it's all very clever, all very well done. So here's the aisle. We've got the Lady Chapel at the end with the Mothers Union banner. The font would originally have been at the back, but it's been moved here in the reordering so that people don't have to get a crick in their necks during baptisms. So Lady Chapel, and very common Lady Chapels, you've got the Mothers Union banner here, and there is still an active branch in Seascale. And there we have looking across there. So the idea of the twin ambones is one's the reading desk and the other would be used as a lectern or might be used by a choir leader depending on what's going on. But I mentioned the destruction of the Iron Church, and this is it. This is the Iron Church. The Iron Church after being destroyed in a storm. It's a timber building clad in corrugated corrugated metal. And obviously when the structure failed, it failed spectacularly. Did a panel come out allowing the wind to tear the church apart internally? Don't know. But whatever happened, you can quite see they went, yes, we need a replacement building because the old one is in separate pieces. Just a look through the window here, you can see the beach and the water tower. So there's the beach out there. It's still relatively early summer. This is something that's quite modern, this idea of having a picture of the monarch in the church. Of course, the king is the supreme governor of the Church of England, not head. Temporal governor is the proper term. So it's a nice little building, a nice little Victorian seaside resort church. So we go outside and have a little wander and see the outside. So here we are outside. Now St Cuthbert's is built 1890 following the destruction of the Iron Church, which had been built about 10 years, well, a little under 10 years earlier. They would have been collecting for a permanent building, and the storm just made it necessary. You can see it's made of this local red sandstone, very similar to Gosforth Church, just up the road here. In fact, the road on the front of the church is Gosforth Road, so you may be able to hear the sea in the background. I know the microphone is not designed to do that, and that's a good thing because you want to, perhaps to hear my voice more than you want to hear the great and mighty ocean. But we'll have a look around the outside and again point out the salient features. And so here we are, St Cuthbert's. That's the War Memorial, that cross there. We'll just pan across here. You can see modern housing, and there's the sea and the water tower, and the station just there. Not much of a station, I'm afraid. It was much more interesting once, but money. So that is the front. You can see the porch door doesn't face south, it faces east, and that's because of the wind off the sea, which is quite nice today, but I expect it can be, well, I know in fact, because the last time I was here was in the winter, and it was quite a gale blowing off the sea, which is understandable, and of course that's why the Iron Church doesn't exist anymore, because it turns out massive sea storms and iron churches don't mix. So round the east end, and it's nice squared, crisp work there. Yes, you can't get around that. I think that's why the chancel is closed. I think there may have been some storm damage to it over the winter, which is entirely probable around here, again given the reason why St Cuthbert's exists in the first place, or at least the modern one does. You can see that you've got here the Bowling Green, great big beach. So it's not very good in terms of if you were a fishing village, you want to go out to sea, but it's really good in terms of seaside resort, great big beach and all that. And so it's got a linear settlement because it's along the front. That's where they are. I think that's the new vicarage. There was an old vicarage there, but it just had its day and ceased to be, as one may put it. So this is round the front, and there's a little car park around there, and as I say, because it's fenced off, I suspect there's been some damage to the chancel or the window, or there's an unsafe chimney or something, so I don't want to risk going down there. So here we have the West End. So you've got the clock there, which is to commemorate the coronation of King George VI, I believe. Windows, you see, you've got that unusual there, and they've got the more typical windows here, and then there is the beautiful, the water tower and everything. Because of course, part of what the whole Seaside Resort thing is, it's the experience of going to the seaside. And part of that for the Victorians was that you had to provide the churches for them. So St Cuthbert's now is a shared Anglican Methodist, what they call a local ecumenical partnership. The Methodist chapel is pretty much behind, just a little way along Gosforth Road from the Anglican church, from St Cuthbert's. And essentially they now worship together, and the Methodist building certainly was used as a church hall. I did see suggestions that they might be trying to sell it, which would make some sense in terms of if you're short of cash and you've got a building you don't use very much. So this is now joint Methodist and Anglican. So there we have it, crowning the hill there. Really striking position, which of course is why the storm struck it with such intensity as to destroy the previous building. And so there you have it, St Cuthbert's Seascale. We're not very far here from Sellafield Nuclear Power Station, which is of course completely safe, which has some effect upon people wanting to move here, largely actually to do with people who are working there. But it's a beautiful location, beautiful beach, I mean absolutely marvellous. Perhaps one of the lesser known seaside resorts on the west coast here. So thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until the next time. Sorry, vehicles honking at one another. So God bless you and keep you until next time.